how can you be vulnerable? And it's always important. I spent a year learning how to be vulnerable. I always pick a theme each year of something to get better by. So one year I learned how to get comfortable being uncomfortable. One year I learned how to live in integrity. So one year I learned how to live being vulnerable. And I really do believe from emotional intelligence, if you pick the thing that scares you the most, it's the thing that, and you work on it intentionally, it's the thing that gets better.
Welcome to the EQ Gangster podcast, where you will learn practical tools to grow your mental and emotional health and intelligence to be the best version of yourself, both at work and at home. It is real, raw, and transformational. The journey of emotional growth isn't easy, but it's worth it. I believe in you.
Dr. G, what's up?
Yay! Okay. Thanks so much. Thanks so much.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm super excited, Dr. Jean, to learn from you.
I'm super excited to be on here because I think emotional intelligence is so important and we don't talk about it enough.
Right, that's right.
And, a lot of things that people experience as challenges come down to emotional intelligence.
Yes. That's awesome to hear from a big cheese like you.
I'm hardly a big cheese. I'm thinking you're the big cheese, my friend. And I'm
big.
Well, then I can't be a cheese. I'm just thinking that's not going to work.
That's right.
And I wish we would teach it in school more because we just don't. We just don't do enough of it.
Right.
So I'm super excited to be talking today about this because it's a subject that I love.
Good. Awesome.
Close to my heart.
Yeah, I'm super stoked to hear that. EQ Gangsters, what is going on? I'm super stoked to chat with my amazing guest today, Dr. Jean. She's got a phenomenal background with some amazing insights. I've watched some interviews that she's done previously, so I'm super excited for her to share her insights with us today. Let me briefly read her bio here. So with us today is Dr. Jean Oursler, otherwise known as the Results Queen. Who in the entrepreneur space does not love results, y'all? What? Okay. Dr. Jean has a PhD in business psychology and is considered one of the country's top business consultants, a top-rated speaker, a world-class business performance coach. She's the author of Give Up Goals and Results Are Yours. Using innovative brain science, Dr. Jean is a creator of a groundbreaking business growth system called the Caveman Brain Business Growth System, which caveman right here. So I love it already. Powered by Caveman Brain. Okay. And one other thing too about Dr. Jean, her mission, which I dig like a shovel, is to leave you better than I found you, which I also super love. Dr. Jean, welcome.
Thank you so much for having me today. I've been looking forward to this podcast for so long. I'm super, super excited. So yay.
Awesome.
Right. Yeah.
So Dr. Jean, tell us your story. Tell us, and if you wouldn't mind, kind of what has been your journey and how did you get to this place where you are today?
A lot of hard work.
I believe it.
And not physical hard work. A lot of mental hard work. I mean, I have been working on my mindset for a very, 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 very long period of time. And I don't think that people work on their EQ enough. And when you finally realize that, because the thing that's between your ears, your brain, is the thing that really propels you or derails you, in my opinion. I don't even know where to start.
Okay. So you had shared something with me before we started recording. For my listeners, right? Emotional intelligence is made of there's four main areas, right? Dr. Daniel Goleman, right? One of the OGs.
Oh
EQ,
my God.
Right.
Love him. Yeah.
Self-awareness, self-management, social awareness, social management. We were talking about earlier, how did your childhood affect and impact your emotional intelligence?
Yeah, so I was raised by a psychologist mom. She has a PhD in counseling. Actually, she got her PhD when I was 13 years old. Here's the story I'll tell you. She often says this when she was talking to a colleague one day and, oh, you have children. Oh, that's nice. How old are your children? Oh, she's 13. Oh, and she was like, and Jean was doing, And my mother said to me later, she goes, I stopped and thought, I don't know what you were doing when you were 13. And I said, oh, that was the year that you were getting your PhD and defending your dissertation. And I moved down to my best friend's house, and I lived down there, and I would come home on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and then I would stay down there on Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and they fed me and they took care of me. And my mother's like, and that didn't put you on the therapist couch? I was like, oh no, like that's what you did, because my mom raised me from an emotional intelligent point of view that you had to be emotionally able to do the things you need to do. My mom at like 5 years old was saying to me, so what's our 10-year result that we're going to get? So my mom raised me so differently than anybody else that was. And I loved it. And in fact, I embraced that radical parenting, you might call it, which is now called emotional intelligent parenting. And I raised my children that way, which also is vastly different, but you have to be able to embrace it. And what's interesting is when you mentioned Daniel, I remember when I first started my company, I was a curriculum developer, and the company that I was working with wanted training in EQ because it was brand new. And I read his book. And what my coach used to say to me is that you read 3 books, you're an expert. So I read 3 books, and one of them happened to be Daniel's book. And then I wrote a course on how to become emotionally intelligent. And that's how I learned about it. And I've been studying it ever since. I think it's
No way.
Yeah, huge.
Fascinating. Now, how long ago was that?
So that was 22 years ago. I started my business. So my daughter was a year old. I had been an HR director in corporate America. I had I created my own job in the company. So I was an entrepreneur. I come from a management family and an entrepreneurial family. So my dad's entrepreneur, my mom's management. I eventually embraced my entrepreneurial side and started a company. And at the time, when I think about it, the reason why I know that is because my daughter was a year old. I had done everything in my company and as an HR director for women. We had 85% of our company was women. So I did everything. Like we could bring your child to work. Think about this 22 years ago, bring your child to work, nursing rooms. Like we had everything. When my daughter turned 9 months old, I went back to work, and I was like, cause she was crawling, and they're like, you're okay. You can't have her in the crib anymore. You gotta come to work. And both the HR director, who was very kind, and I were like, yeah, I gotta go. So the VP of HR let me go. And as an HR director, I moved on and I started my company. And my daughter was a year old. So that's how I know how long. And that's when I started emotional intelligence, because I was curriculum developing for companies. And eventually I decided to start my own company and training and development, which then I morphed into a management consulting company, which then, and we just talked about this. And then, of course, everything is about my daughter in many ways, my poor son. She, as a competitive equestrian, she sustained a major concussion in her first month of her freshman year in high school. And I was traveling around the country and running this great big business. And I literally overnight shut everything down, took a couple of clients and moved back home. Like I was back where I was 16 years before, feeling really weird about it. But I started a company online. And when the pandemic helped, all of you people just caught up to us. Virtual is my natural habitat. That's what I say. So
I love it. Wow.
That's a little bit how I got where I am today. Wow. And then you think about how did I get to Caveman Brain was as an entrepreneur and, as an emotionally intelligent girl, you always want to be better, right? You want to think about how do you get better? And the reason why people call me the results queen is because I'm all about getting a result at the end of the day. And I do want to leave you better than I found you. That has been my personal mission. And also, you're going to like this. When I had children, I decided to develop a mission. 2 happy, well, at the time it was 1, but 2 happy, healthy, well-adjusted model adult citizens who are financially independent from me. How many times? So I think having a mission to raise your children is really important. Again, different kind of parenting, right?
Right, that's right.
So when my business was not growing and I was unhappy, and I truly believe in coaching, I think having a coach is one of the most important things that you can have. And coaches in a variety of ways, right? So I hired 4 different coaches to fix me, because what the heck is wrong with me? And one of them happened to be a Harvard neuroscientist. And he made me realize that it was my amygdala, my internal protection system, think, fight, flight, or freeze, that was keeping me small and preventing me from moving forward. So even though I had all this great stuff in emotional intelligence, I still needed to learn and grow around that. And that's how I created Caveman Brain, because you can't say amygdala all the time. And now I teach Caveman Brain to everybody because I want to leave you better than I found you. But it's this one thing that prevents you from being the most amazing self that you can be.
Absolutely love it, Dr. Jean. So And so I totally agree with you. I've read hundreds, if not thousands, of self-improvement, self-development books over the years. And one thing that never, the visualization and the affirmations and all the, like, I did that, ad nauseum, and none of it worked or
Mhm.
stuck because I was so emotionally dysfunctional and I had no idea. And it wasn't until, like, the single greatest thing outside of my faith that has impacted every other area of my life in a positive way has been the growth of my emotional health and emotional intelligence. But again,
Mhm.
4 or 5 years ago, I would have been like, Dr. Gene, you're smoking crack. I don't know what you're talking about. You know what I mean? Right? Because I was so emotionally clueless. I had the EQ of a 5-year-old. Literally, I had no idea. Right. And so I love to hear that that this is kind of this is your business, and you're helping other companies. I want to ask you a personal question, if you're cool with that.
Yes, sir.
What have been some of the most challenging emotional aspects of your journey as an entrepreneur?
I think it's my clients are always going to leave me because I'm never good enough.
Wow.
I have a real big, so it's sort of, how can you be vulnerable? And it's always important. I spent a year learning how to be vulnerable. I always pick a theme each year of something to get better by. So one year I learned how to get comfortable being uncomfortable. One year I learned how to live in integrity. So one year I learned how to live being vulnerable. And I really do believe from emotional intelligence, if you pick the thing that scares you the most, it's the thing that, and you work on it intentionally, it's the thing that gets better. So
Mm.
I will tell you that I have a coach. So she's been with me now 7 years. I watched her speak and I literally came up to her and said to her, I am so broken. I am a super successful entrepreneur who runs $1 million business. And yet I think every morning when I get up, oh my God, all my clients are going to leave me and I have no money. How is that?
Wow.
And think about how you subconsciously project that onto other people. So
Mm.
here it is, you have this facade of I'm so amazing. And yet emotionally, how do you serve people? And from an emotional point of view, when you're deficit, how do you run a company when you believe that all your clients are leaving you? How do you support your employees when you get there? And I will tell you, it was a 2-year, now I've been with her 7 years. It was a 2-year journey just to get to I serve my clients every day. And I have this wonderful mission of leaving them better than find them. And it's okay if they leave me. In fact, that means they've graduated. So emotional intelligence is so important because it allows you to think, I hate to say it this way, intelligently or act intelligently or feel intelligently, as opposed to this deficit of I'm a jerky person.
Right. Sure.
Would you
Oh,
agree?
oh, yes, absolutely. And how would you define emotional intelligence?
I mean, even I always think you can learn and grow every single day and where you're thinking about. And to me, emotional intelligence is understanding your emotions and how they impact the actions of that on not only yourself, but the people around you.
Mm.
And I don't think, from Caveman Brain, it's always about us first because Caveman Brain is there to protect us to ensure we don't die. So it's always about us first, which if we're looking at everything from us, then you've forgotten about the person who's across the table from you, right? But if you're not emotionally aware and purposely using that emotional awareness and intelligence to be better, let's say, right, to act appropriately, you have to work on you first, right? Oxygen mask on you first, and then oxygen mask around the person across from you. And yet so many of us are so involved in all of our own stuff, we often don't realize the impacts that our actions are having on other people's emotions.
That's right. That's exactly right. Most leaders have no idea how they come across to other people, and some, I think some people too, it's like, dude, I'm not, I don't want to be this kumbaya, bathe in essential oils, sniff skittle
No.
farts every day, right, kind of person. I'm like, dude, that's not the goal of EQ. That's not the
Mm-mm.
purpose. That's not the end result of
Mm-mm.
being emotionally intelligent. It's being a better human being, a better leader, a better man, a better woman, a better entrepreneur, a better decision maker. And it's been, and man, it's so, what you said there is so true. Like for me, as I've gotten healthier emotionally, my emotional agility has increased, my emotional bandwidth, my emotional capacity,
Mhm.
my emotional resilience, my emotional endurance, all these different areas have expanded and increased as a result of getting healthier emotionally. What have been some helpful tools for you to help leaders increase their emotional intelligence?
Oh, I think it's coaching. I think it comes down to coaching, mastermind groups, surrounding yourself with people who challenge you. Because most of us as entrepreneurs, we don't like to be challenged, right? Because we know best and we know what's going on and we're running a great company. And we work a gajillion hours because we think if we work really hard, then we'll do okay. And then we're responsible for all of these families that work for us. And I don't think we realize, and this is something about not even entrepreneurs, but this is about corporate America. Corporate America does not understand that people don't show up to screw up. They show up in the best possible light. And then we do things to them that hurt them emotionally. We don't, I think entrepreneurs actually are probably more advanced in this than corporate America, but we don't think about the person from a human being point of view. Like they want to pay their mortgage, they want to send their kid to college, they want to go to Disney World. And yet we're not saying to them, okay, we're putting you on a performance improvement plan and now we're firing you and we're laying you off and good luck to you. And thank God,
Right. That's right.
I think really entrepreneurism in many ways is a path to freedom, because you're allowed to be able to do whatever you want to do. I mean, it's challenging. It's a different form of work, but at the end of the day, it allows you to be healthy emotionally, much more so than in corporate America, in my opinion.
Yeah.
Right? I just think that people, for most organizations, people are the most important thing.
That's right.
Without your people. However, I also have this saying, like, work would be easy if it weren't for the people, right? So how do you manage your people and be able to treat them in a way that then they feel good that they can give back to you, right?
Right. That's exactly right. Well, one of my favorite quotes that I say a lot on my podcast is emotionally healthy leaders create emotionally healthy cultures and organizations, which lead to optimize and maximize performance, engagements, and results.
Amen, brother. Amen, brother. Because people don't think that emotions bring you more engagement, but like right now, and I realize that this might date this podcast, but right now, like you have these people like you have to be in the office 5 days a week, and I think to myself, well, what did we do for 2 years during the pandemic? Did we not all make money? Did we all not do stuff? Did we all not why are we running back home to mama? Why don't we embrace from where we are and grow from that? And some are, some people are using a hybrid method. Some people are using an all virtual method. But the fact is that when you make people come into work 5 days a week, why? Because you think they're going to be more productive when you see them? That's so old school. Learn and grow as a leader and realize what your people need and then give them that, because that's going to make them more productive, more engaged.
100%. That's exactly right. One of the things that I work on with the executives that I coach and that I'm working with, one of the big things is their energy management. If they don't have the energy to work on something that I had no idea takes a lot of physical energy, working on your emotions, I had no idea that I had, again, that's how clueless I was, that if you don't give yourself the grace and space to work on a good energy management plan for you as a leader each day or as an entrepreneur each day, you're running off of 60% or 40% or 30% energy, it's going to be brutal for you to try to work on your EQ, an area that many people are not, they may be intellectually familiar with. Oh, I know what an EQ is. I know how to define it. Okay. That's a whole different ballgame than applying it and working on it. What I've found. So what have, for you, with being a big baller and all the awesome stuff that you do, what have been some of the top 2 or 3 tools or resources that you use to help organizations get better results?
Well, okay. So before I do that, if I may, one of the things as a leader, I read this a long time ago, is that you should develop a manual for yourself that you give to your employees that tells people how to interact with you. And like, so for example, don't talk to me right before lunch. Because if you're talking to me right before lunch, I'm probably not going to be at my best because I'm going to have something called hungry child syndrome, which is something that my mother came up with. When I have low blood sugar, I am not very nice. And then the next you know, like if you give me a cookie, I'm back to my normal happy self. But the fact is that, yeah. So, I mean, you talk about emotional intelligence. My mother would be like, oh, hungry child syndrome, we need to feed you. And when I was first married, my husband was like, why are you so mean and nasty right before eating? I was like, oh, because I have hungry child syndrome. Right. That's awareness of yourself and your emotions. And like, and I now say to people, like, if I get kind of on the mean, nasty side, give me a cookie, feed me something. Or I'll say to somebody, you need to feed me now because I'm going to be descending into nasty gene and you're not going to like that very much. Like I'm really not nice, but that's all emotional intelligence of knowing who you are. So don't have a meeting with me between 12 and 1 or between 1 and 2 when I'm having lunch because you're not getting great Gene. You're not getting amazing Dr. Gene. You're getting nasty Gene who's probably highly judgmental and you're going to run and screen away from her.
Right. I tell people my EQ drops when I haven't had a taco in a while.
See? And knowing that and being able to communicate that to your team and understanding that as a leader is super important. But that takes reflection, that takes time. And that's why I think coaching is so important. Look, you can go to training all day long, but you're going to have 1 or 2 things that maybe you take out of, and maybe if you're disciplined enough, you're going to be able to put it in there. But to me, if you really want to get better, spend some time with a coach. That's really, to me, the number one. Yeah, you can read books. Like I find books are really interesting and to implement 1 or 2 nuggets. But the fact is, at the end of the day, it's been coaching that absolutely has made a difference in my own leadership. It's coaching. We actually even track this because in my own company, we do a tremendous amount of coaching, and we can bolt on to any training program because if we understand the material, we'll coach around it. But it is the coaching that absolutely gets results. We actually have research that shows that coaching is the thing that will make the difference for any executive or any team that you're doing. I mean, even if you do group coaching, you put everyone together and have conversation, it's much better than sending someone to a training class or to read a book. Sorry.
No, I love that. It's, and another massive point that you made. So for me, as a guy who, again, prior to 4 years ago, had no concept of emotions or intelligence for that matter. Right?
No, I suspect you were highly intelligent. I'm just saying,
I don't know about
just didn't know about emotionally intelligent.
And so I don't know if you've heard of Michael Bungay Stanier. He wrote Coaching Habit, The Advice Trap.
Oh, yeah.
I interviewed him on my podcast. And
that must have been so fascinating.
Oh, super fascinating, dude. But one of the things that, you both kind of hit on some points there on the power of reflection and coaching. Well, and so then I asked him, and I want to ask you the same question, is like, so the power of reflection, in my opinion, only works if you have any degree of self-awareness. When you were like me, who had no degree of self-awareness, and I would take 22 seconds to reflect, and then I was like, okay, I'm done. I want to do.
Yeah, right. Moving on, right? Call it a day.
See, I want to do instead of think. I don't want to think because I'm not good at it. I don't want to reflect because I'm not good at it. How do you get good at reflection?
So it's a strategic thing if you think about it, right? So most of us are tacticians who are really good at doing. And yet what we talk about, especially when we write strategic plans for companies, is that it's the action, right? It's the idea of thinking about strategic stuff, which takes time and energy. And our caveman brains like things that we can go check. It's actually a hit of dopamine that our brains give to say you're doing a good job, keep going. And if there's no hit of dopamine, we're like, that doesn't make any sense to us, so we're out. And strategy takes time and energy, and you often don't see anything at the end of your strategic session unless you start to say, oh, because we talked about this today, I have these 3 action steps. And this is actually what we taught in my country. Before I got onto your podcast, I was sitting in a strategy meeting with a client talking about client retention and how are we going to, and they all know it's about strategy. We're not doing any tactics. And they came out with like, okay, these are 3 strategic things we need to work on And then we'll come back, and before we even put a plan together, we got to know the data. We got to do some interviewing. So the fact is that when you think about reflection, it's strategic, because if you just do it tactically, you don't know how to do it. You do it for, as you said, 22 seconds, and you move forward, because there's nothing that is interesting or giving the hit of dopamine around it unless you decide to create that. So as I'm reflecting, well, I'm telling my brain, this is a really good thing that I'm doing. And what am I going to learn from this? And what could I implement from this? Because I'm spending some time just thinking about where this is going. Okay, now I've learned some things. And wow, thanks, brain, for taking the time to doing this. I really appreciate that I took 5 minutes and I made myself a little plan so that when these things happen today, because they're going to, I'll know exactly how to react to it. Notice how I thanked my brain? I was like, thanks, brain, for doing this. Thanks so much for doing this. Because we don't thank the brain enough. So the brain goes, okay, if you didn't thank me, then we're not doing it anymore. Is that cool? Is that interesting?
Love it. And I love even one of the questions that you asked, there's like, for us, for those of us who have not had any type of track record or history of reflection and making reflection part of our regular, operating routine, is coming up with what's the outcome of this reflection, so that I do have a result, right? That I know that I'm trying to work towards, versus like for me, when I was first like, man, why would I reflect and take this time? I didn't know what the outcome was of reflecting, and I didn't know how to do it. I had no, well, how do I reflect? How do I just sit there and think about what? That's how, you know what I'm saying? That's how cool stuff. The emotional intelligence clue bus drove by, girl, and I just waved.
Yeah. Well, that's why I'm the results queen, because so many people don't think about results. They don't think about outcomes. They're thinking about goals, right? Goals don't work. Results do. So how do you think about the outcome? What am I looking to achieve? And our brains actually react much better to outcomes and achievements and results, and getting us to that because it has some sort of idea, as opposed to I'm thinking about this goal. So when you sit down to do anything, what's the result we're looking for here, right? So if you're reflecting, what is the result I'm looking for? And I could take a minute, I can even take 22 seconds, but I need to know what the outcome is. We call that Z to A thinking in my organization. Most people do A to Z thinking. We do Z to A thinking, and we teach people how to do that.
Love it. We, in the military, we call it backwards planning.
Oh, I love that.
Yeah. That's how all the planning happens, is what's the objective? What are we trying to accomplish? And then we just reverse engineer it. Yeah. I love that Z to A.
But think about that. And even if you do that in your organization, right? And you start to think about the backward planning, Z to A thinking, then everybody knows. That's one of the things I love about the military is everyone knows what the mission is. Everyone knows where to go. If you get off, like if you jump out of the plane and you get off track, you know where you're going, right? So to think about and then also, and I don't think the military probably does this, but from an emotional point of view, what are we going to feel as we go through this thing so that we can combat when we're all thinking, oh, we're down or this. So we have an organization that we've been doing sales training and coaching in for like 7 years, because they keep meeting their numbers. Actually, they keep growing like by 30, 40% each year. One of the things we've talked about is that they're a flock of geese, and there are people at the front who are driving because the people in the back are a little tired, and that's okay, because we're going to carry them, because those people are going to move up in the V of the geese, and they're going to be at the head. And so there's 30 of them, and they all work together in this V geese idea, which we came up with for them, to let them know from an emotionally intelligent point of view that it's okay. You just brought in a huge piece of business, like move to the back, or, hey, you want to keep going? Great. We're going to keep going. We'll give you a little air and oxygen and a little love when you need it. That emotional intelligence on a sales team, that doesn't happen unless you do it purposefully.
Love it. Love it. And just man, there's so much great skinny there, Gene. It's like another dynamic of what you just kind of expressed is also for the brain. And I'd love to kind of hear your insights on this too, is how important is clarity for the brain?
Oh, huge. So a stuck mind does nothing. How many times do we make people stuck, right? And the more you can clarify. So interesting, I had this conversation with a VIP coaching client yesterday. He was a lawyer, believe it or not. And he's like, I said to him, you don't focus on the how, you focus on the what. So focus on the what, not the how. So the what is the clarity. The how is how I'm going to do it. But most people are so stuck on how is this going to happen? Will this happen? How will I make this happen? This seems so too big for me. Brain doesn't care about the how. It will figure out the how. Brain cares about what is it that we want to do? What do we want to, what do we want to go? What do we want to do? How are we going to get there will be up to me. And I always say this to my clients. If you know the what, the brain figures out the how. I don't know how it does it, but it always does. And it gets you to where you want it to go. As long as you tell it, because the brain only knows what it sees and what it hears. So if you're giving it a lot of negative stuff, right, then you get a lot of negative back. If you give a lot of positive stuff, you get a lot of positive back because it only knows what it sees and hears. So when we're watching a scary movie, which is not truth, our brain still reacts. It floods our body with chemicals. It makes us scared, makes our hands sweat. We think we should be fleeing out of this room, right? But the brain doesn't know fact from fiction. It only knows what it sees and what it hears. So whatever you're telling it, so as long as you tell it something, because it's going to listen to you, then it will get you where it needs to go.
Love that. And it's almost like, and I love that horror movie example. So like an adventure movie does the same thing, different set of chemicals and stuff.
Yeah.
Right? How can we create our life like an adventure movie, something that we like, and that's something I value also, like, and I think Michael Bungay Stanier says the same thing. Is like, let the client be the hero in their story, not you as the coach, but them.
Yeah.
Help them be the hero in their own adventure story.
Well, that's because it's not about me. It's about you. And what we tell people and what we teach people in new business development, we don't even call it sales. We call it new business development, is that it's never about you. It's always about the person across the table. And you have to be super emotionally intelligent to be able to let go of you and your ego in order to be able to serve people and give them what they need and what they want.
How do you do that? How do you let go of your ego?
Well, it comes down to your caveman brain, and you have to think about that you're not going to die today. And we also have something called smart person syndrome. It's something I created. So if you think about smart person syndrome is we are trained from when we are little kids and we go to kindergarten to whatever time we finish school. The person who answers the question, raises their hands the fastest and answers the question correctly is the smartest person in the room. So we are conditioning, or have been conditioned, to show how smart we are by telling people all the things that we are smart on. We can show people that we're super smart by asking great questions and allowing the other person to come to the realization of where you want them to go. We call that facilitating buying. You're helping someone make a decision. You're facilitating them to an outcome. People come to with a problem. Well, what is the outcome you want to achieve? And then by a series of questions, I can help you understand how to get there. So I become super smart as an adult by asking questions, not as a child by telling you everything. So that's how you let go of the ego, is that you can still be smart. You can just be smart in a different way. And that feeds the ego, but it makes it about the person across the table, not about you.
Love it. Dig that like a backhoe, Dr. G. That is funny. One of the other things that I find myself doing coaching executives is my people pleasing addiction will still seep in there a little bit. Like, oh, I want to save Dr. Jean and I want to, the savior complex, or like, I want her to, because that was when I was a hardcore people pleaser addict. And thank God I've worked through a bunch of that. I still have some in there still that I'm working through, but like subconsciously, again, I wasn't even aware of this stuff until recently. I want to get you to like me so I can get validation and affirmation of my worth and value, which was, again, unbeknownst to me, incredibly exhausting.
Yes.
And I had no idea until I started to stop doing that. And I'm like, wow, what was I smoking?
It's how you're raised, right? So we say things come from 4 places. It comes from your culture. It comes from your parents. It comes from your childhood, and it comes from your life experiences. So if you can understand and identify where those things are showing up, we call it baggage. We usually call it somebody else's baggage, and you could throw that baggage off the train and get new baggage, which is what you've done, right? And I also think love languages are super important too, understanding your love language and understanding other people's love language, because your love language and my love language are not the same.
Right.
Right. So if you want to spend a lot of time with me and I really want you to tell me words of affirmation, and I have to be able to ask for my words of affirmation, or you have to ask for spending time with me and not feel like I'm dependent on you, or I'm coercing you into doing it. Like, that's all emotional intelligence stuff. The more you know about you, like, do every kind of assessment, like strength finders, Myers-Briggs, like the more you know about you, the more you can then learn about the person across the table.
Yes. Love that. Love that. One of the analogies that I use is with the military is like, you have to know what, and this may not be the most popular, but you have to know what weapon system you are.
Oh yeah.
Am I a little teeny pistol? Am I a big machine gun? Am I, like, because then that also, not only does that help you be more effective on the team, but that also, it also kind of lets you know how you fit into the tribe that you're
Yeah.
a part of, right?
Yeah.
There's a verse in the Bible, no, like it's one body with many parts. There's not one part of the body that's better than the others, and we all make up the body, which, like, the elbow is just as important as the eyeball, which is just important as the kneecap, and just figure out which, like, are you the elbow? Are you the eyeball? Are you the kneecap? But if the eyeball is playing the role as the elbow, there's going to be, right, it's going to not only make you feel uncomfortable and awkward and ineffective, but it's also going to, like, the whole body's going to be looking at you like, bro, you don't fit in there. And it's not that you don't fit in the body, it's just find where in the body that you fit in, right?
Oh yeah. So think about this. There's always a devil's advocate on every team, right? But that person is painted as the negative person that doesn't understand, right? So when we do teamwork, we're always like, okay, you're going to play the role of dissenter, right? Or you're the so that you're going to find all the holes that then the other people can fill. That's a really important, it's a huge role, rather than, that person's so negative, they're always saying no, right? The person who's we call it the canary in the coal mine. That's the person who's like, I see danger, I see danger, I see danger. And yet you usually kill off your canary. Why? You want them to be the person who's telling you where the danger is going to be coming up there. Don't you want someone who's going to tell you where all the holes are in your plan, and someone who's going to tell you the danger that you're going to run into? Hello? But it takes a really strong leader to be able to understand that and to allow those people to play the different parts, as you said.
Yes, they've got to be secure. They've got to be aware, both self and so. Yeah, love it. Love it. So how do we find you? How do we follow you? How do we stay connected to you?
So I really go by, Jean, the results queen. So if you go look at that, you can find me any place on social media, but the best place to go is CavemanBrain.com. So on CavemanBrain.com, there's tons of free resources that we actually use with our clients, so that if you never want to work with us, that's fine. Remember, leave you better than we found you. So you can download those, start using them. We have free trainings that you can come to. And then we have our classes and our coaching that you can sign up for if that's something you're interested in. If you want to have more conversation with me, you can get through there as well. But we really, it's just CavemanBrain.com, and super simple in order how to get to us.
Any final thoughts?
I think it's really important that you know why you're doing it, right? I always don't like the word why, I like the what. What are you doing and what makes you do that? And then to be able to tell it to people so that they understand where you're coming from. And when you have all of that going on, you're going to have much better relationships personally and professionally, and you'll be able to grow and be able to be much more profitable and live the life that you've always wanted to live.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Dr. Jean. You rock like ZZ Top.
Oh my gosh, thanks so much. Well, this has been so amazing. I'm so appreciative and I'm grateful. And thank you again. It's been such a wonderful conversation.